In 1950, mothers made frugal breakfasts from leftover scraps when boxed cereal cost more than fresh meat. She was smart. She knew how to turn yesterday's dinner into morning's meal without wasting a penny. Nobody believed her until they saw the empty icebox and the full breakfast table. She had tricks her mother taught her and others she invented when hunger became mandatory. Then people called them depression food, and the recipes disappeared from every table. Today, we're rediscovering all 30 forgotten breakfasts that kept families fed. Number 7 fed 4 children for a week with 1 bag of cornmeal. Let me show you what saved them. Goldenrod eggs was the frugal, famous, and lovable breakfast that turned ordinary eggs into something children actually wanted to eat. 4 eggs boiled until firm. She peeled them under cold water. The whites chopped small. The yolks stayed whole. Butter melted in a pan. Flour stirred in until it smelled nutty. Milk went in slow while she whisked. The sauce thickened. Chopped egg whites folded through. Toast went on plates. The creamy white mixture spooned over. Then the magic happened. She pushed those yellow yolks through a grater. They fell like gold dust across the white sauce. That's where the name came from. Golden yolks scattered on top. It looked expensive. It cost nothing. 4 eggs fed 6 people this way. Children loved how pretty it looked. Mothers loved stretching breakfast without anyone noticing. The dish disappeared when grating yolks felt like too much trouble. Scrambled eggs won. Corn fritters was the sweet, crispy breakfast that used 1 can of corn to feed a family of 6. She drained the corn and saved the liquid. Flour, baking powder, salt, and sugar mixed in a bowl. An egg went in next. The corn liquid thinned the batter. The drained corn kernels folded through. Oil heated in a cast-iron skillet until it shimmered. She dropped spoonfuls of batter into the hot oil. They puffed up golden and crispy. Each fritter turned once. The outside stayed crunchy, the inside stayed soft and sweet. They drained on newspaper. Butter and syrup went on top. Sometimes just sugar. The fritters tasted like summer even in winter because canned corn kept its sweetness year-round. 1 can made 12 fritters. Breakfast for the whole family from 1 ingredient. Corn fritters disappeared when convenience won over taste. Frozen waffles took less work. Nobody wanted to stand at a hot stove anymore. Banana fritters was the weekend breakfast treat made from bananas too ripe to eat plain. 3 brown spotted bananas mashed smooth with a fork. Flour, baking powder, sugar, and a pinch of salt mixed together. An egg and a splash of milk went into the dry ingredients. The mashed bananas folded in last. The batter came together thick and lumpy. Oil heated deep in a heavy pan. She dropped spoonfuls of batter in carefully. They sizzled loud. The fritters puffed golden and smelled like caramelized sugar. Each one turned once with a slotted spoon. They drained on brown paper. Powdered sugar dusted on top while still warm. The outside stayed crispy. The inside tasted like banana bread, but lighter. Overripe bananas nobody wanted became the breakfast everyone fought over. 3 bananas made enough for the whole table. Banana fritters disappeared when throwing away brown bananas seemed easier than frying. Convenience beat creativity.
Before we move on, many of you asked in the comments where to find these recipes. We even received tons of email too, so we published these recipes on our website. The link is in the description. Let's continue.
Fried cornmeal mush was the southern breakfast that turned last night's porridge into this morning's crispy cakes. Leftover cornmeal mush cooled overnight in a loaf pan. By morning it sat firm enough to slice. She cut it into half-inch slices with a knife dipped in cold water. Flour dusted each slice. Oil heated in a cast-iron skillet. The slices went in 1 at a time. They fried until golden brown and crispy on both sides. The outside crunched. The inside stayed soft and creamy. Butter melted on top. Syrup or molasses drizzled over, sometimes just salt and pepper. The transformation happened fast. What started as boring porridge became something worth waking up for. 1 pot of mush from the night before fed the family twice. Nothing wasted. Fried cornmeal mush disappeared when refrigerators got bigger and leftovers got forgotten. Throwing away became easier than transforming. Codfish cakes was the coastal breakfast that stretched expensive salt cod across 3 meals. A pound of dried salt cod soaked overnight in cold water. The salt leached out. By morning the fish flaked apart with a fork. Boiled potatoes mashed smooth. The flaked cod mixed through. An egg bound everything together. Salt, pepper, and a little onion if they had it. Her hands shaped the mixture into palm-sized patties. Flour dusted each one. Oil heated in a skillet. The cakes fried golden on both sides, crispy outside, soft inside. The fish flavor stayed mild. They ate them with eggs or alone with butter. 1 pound of salt cod made a dozen cakes, breakfast for days from one ingredient. Codfish cakes disappeared when fresh fish became cheaper than salt cod. Convenience stores sold breakfast sandwiches faster than anyone could fry fish at home. 5 frugal breakfasts down. Goldenrod eggs that looked expensive. Corn fritters from 1 can. Banana fritters from brown bananas. Fried cornmeal mush from leftovers. Codfish cakes that lasted days. 25 more forgotten breakfasts ahead. Keep watching. The next one stretched even less into even more. Shured eggs was the elegant breakfast that looked fancy but used only what every kitchen already had. Butter went into small ramekins. 1 ramekin per person. She cracked 2 eggs into each dish. Salt and pepper sprinkled on top. A spoonful of cream went over each egg. The ramekins sat in a shallow pan filled with hot water. The whole thing baked in the oven until the whites set firm and the yolks stayed runny. Toast cut into strips for dipping. The eggs came out looking like something from a restaurant. Individual servings. Cooked perfect every time. No flipping, no watching. The oven did the work. Shured eggs made Sunday breakfast feel special without costing extra. The dish disappeared when individual ramekins seemed like too much washing. Scrambled eggs in 1 pan meant 1 dish to clean. Efficiency won over presentation. Nobody wanted to wash 6 small dishes anymore. Dutch baby pancake was the dramatic breakfast that impressed guests without impressing the budget. 4 eggs, 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of milk, and a pinch of salt whisked together in a bowl. The batter stayed thin and lumpy. A cast-iron skillet went into a hot oven with butter melting inside. When the butter sizzled, the batter poured in all at once. The oven door shut fast. 20 minutes later, the pancake puffed up high around the edges. The center stayed flat. It came out golden and crispy. Powdered sugar and lemon juice went on top, sometimes just butter and syrup. The pancake deflated as it cooled, but still tasted perfect. 1 pancake fed 6 people when cut into wedges. Dutch baby disappeared when the drama felt like too much trouble. Regular pancakes flipped on a griddle seemed easier. Nobody wanted to heat the whole oven for breakfast anymore. Egg gravy was the poor man's luxury that turned flour and eggs into something that tasted richer than it was. Bacon grease or butter melted in a skillet. Flour stirred in until it smelled toasted. Milk poured in slow while she whisked constantly. The gravy thickened and bubbled. Salt and lots of black pepper seasoned it. 2 eggs cracked straight into the hot gravy. She stirred fast, breaking the yolks and scrambling them through. The eggs cooked in ribbons throughout the white gravy. Biscuits split open on plates. The egg gravy ladled over warm, it soaked into the biscuits. The combination filled bellies and stuck to ribs. 1 cup of flour and 2 eggs made enough gravy for 6 biscuits. Egg gravy disappeared when country cooking stopped being country and started being called bland. Nobody wanted to admit eating eggs in gravy anymore. Fancy brunch replaced it. Hashed brown potato cakes transformed leftover mashed potatoes into crispy breakfast that tasted nothing like leftovers. Cold mashed potatoes from dinner mixed with a beaten egg. diced onion if they had it, salt and pepper. Flour dusted in just enough to help them hold shape. Her hands formed the mixture into patties. They flattened thin between her palms. Oil heated in a cast-iron skillet. The potato cakes went in carefully. They fried until the bottoms turned golden brown and crispy. She flipped them once. The other side crisped up. The outside crunched. The inside stayed creamy. They tasted better than the original mashed potatoes ever did. 2 cups of leftovers made 8 cakes. Breakfast from dinner scraps. Hashed brown potato cakes disappeared when throwing away leftovers became normal. Refrigerators held forgotten containers. Nobody remembered what cold mashed potatoes could become anymore. Cottage cheese pancakes was the protein-packed breakfast that used cheap cottage cheese to make pancakes fluffy and filling. A cup of cottage cheese went into a bowl, 2 eggs mixed in. Flour, baking powder, and a pinch of salt stirred through. The batter came together lumpy because of the cottage cheese curds. A hot griddle waited with melted butter. She poured small circles of batter. They cooked slower than regular pancakes. Bubbles formed on top. She flipped them once. The second side browned. The cottage cheese melted into the batter, making each pancake light and airy. They tasted tangy and rich. The texture stayed soft, not heavy. Butter and syrup on top. 6 pancakes from 1 cup of cottage cheese. More protein than regular pancakes. Cottage cheese pancakes disappeared when high protein became a marketing term, not a necessity. Nobody needed cheap protein anymore. Convenience won. 10 forgotten breakfasts revealed. Shured eggs baked in ramekins. Dutch baby puffed in the oven. Egg gravy scrambled through white sauce. Potato cakes from leftovers. Cottage cheese pancakes packed with protein. 20 more ahead. The frugal tricks keep getting better. Stay with me. Grits with butter and cheese was the Southern breakfast that turned cheap cornmeal into something creamy and filling enough to last until lunch. Water boiled in a heavy pot with salt. White grits poured in slow while she stirred constantly. Lumps formed if the stirring stopped. The heat dropped low. The grits bubbled and thickened. She stirred every few minutes for 20 minutes. The grits absorbed all the water and turned smooth. Butter went in first. A full tablespoon per cup of dry grits. Sharp cheddar cheese, grated fresh, came next. The cheese melted through while she stirred. The grits turned pale yellow and glossy. More butter on top when served. Black pepper cracked fresh over each bowl. The grits tasted rich and creamy like something more expensive than cornmeal and cheese. The texture stayed smooth, not grainy. 1 cup of dry grits fed 6 people when cooked with enough water and butter. The dish stuck to ribs and kept hunger away for hours. Children ate it without complaining. Adults, 8 seconds. Grits with butter and cheese disappeared from breakfast tables outside the South when grits became associated with poverty instead of comfort. Fast food breakfast sandwiches replaced slow-cooked grits. Instant grits in packets tried to bring them back, but the texture never matched. Nobody wanted to stand at the stove stirring for 20 minutes anymore. The patience required seemed unreasonable when cereal poured from a box in seconds. The breakfast that fed generations became a regional curiosity. Coffee soup was the Depression-era breakfast that hung on through the 1950s in rural and Amish communities where wasting nothing mattered more than modern convenience. Hot coffee brewed strong and black. Day-old bread tore into bite-sized pieces. The bread went into bowls, sugar sprinkled over the bread. Some families added cinnamon. The hot coffee poured over everything. Milk or cream went in last to cool it down enough to eat. The bread soaked up the coffee and turned soft. The sugar melted through. The whole thing ate like a warm breakfast pudding that tasted like sweetened coffee. It filled bellies and provided caffeine at the same time. Children grew up drinking coffee this way before they drank it straight. The dish cost almost nothing. Leftover bread. Yesterday's coffee reheated. A spoonful of sugar. That's all it took to feed a family breakfast. Coffee soup kept farmers going through morning chores when hot breakfast took too long to make. It prepared fast. It ate fast. It kept them warm on cold mornings. The breakfast disappeared when throwing away stale bread became normal. Fresh bread every day from the store meant no one needed to use up the old stuff. Coffee became something to drink, not eat. The combination seemed strange once everyone forgot why it existed. Coffee soup survived longest in Amish communities where waste still mattered and old ways held value. But even there it faded when younger generations wanted cereal like everyone else. Turkey scrapple was the regional breakfast that stretched leftover turkey scraps into a week of fried slices. After roasting a turkey, she saved every bit that didn't serve as a main dish. Skin, small meat pieces, and the cooking liquid all went into a pot. The mixture simmered until everything fell apart. She strained it and picked out any bones. The cooking liquid measured out. For every cup of liquid she used half a cup of cornmeal. The liquid boiled again. Cornmeal whisked in slowly to avoid lumps. The mixture bubbled thick like porridge. She stirred constantly for 15 minutes. Sage, black pepper, and salt seasoned it. The cooked mixture poured into a loaf pan, greased with butter. It cooled overnight. By morning the scrapple set firm enough to slice. She cut it into half-inch slices. Flour dusted each slice. Oil heated in a cast-iron skillet. The slices fried until both sides turned golden brown and crispy. The outside crunched. The inside stayed soft and savory. The turkey flavor came through mild, not strong. Scrapple ate like sausage patties but cost almost nothing. One turkey carcass made enough scrapple for breakfast all week. The dish came from Pennsylvania Dutch country and spread wherever frugal cooking mattered. Turkey scrapple disappeared when buying ground turkey seemed easier than saving scraps. Pre-made breakfast sausages filled grocery store freezers. Nobody wanted to simmer scraps and wait overnight anymore. The transformation from trash to breakfast got lost when convenience became affordable. Baked oatmeal was the make-ahead breakfast that turned regular oatmeal into something sturdy enough to slice and serve like cake. Rolled oats mixed with brown sugar, cinnamon, baking powder, and salt in a large bowl. Milk and beaten eggs stirred through, melted butter went in last. The mixture poured into a greased baking dish. It baked for 35 minutes until the top turned golden and the edges pulled away from the pan. The whole thing set firm like a cross between oatmeal and cake. She cut it into squares and served it warm with milk poured over or butter melting on top. Sometimes raisins or chopped apples mixed into the batter before baking. The texture stayed chewy, not mushy. It tasted sweeter than stovetop oatmeal. The dish prepared the night before and baked in the morning while everyone dressed for the day. One pan fed 6 people. Leftovers reheated or ate cold for lunch. Baked oatmeal solved the problem of making breakfast for a crowd without standing at the stove stirring. It kept longer than regular oatmeal, too. The pan sat covered on the counter for 2 days without spoiling. The breakfast disappeared when individualism replaced family meals. Everyone wanted different things at different times. Baked oatmeal required everyone to eat the same thing at the same time. Instant oatmeal packets let each person customize their own bowl. Microwaves reheated individual portions in seconds. Nobody wanted to plan breakfast the night before anymore. The efficiency of baking one pan for everyone lost value when feeding just yourself became normal. Eggs a la king was the fancy-sounding breakfast that dressed up cheap ingredients with a name that made them sound expensive. Butter melted in a saucepan. Flour stirred in until smooth. Milk poured slowly while she whisked. The sauce thickened over low heat. A small jar of diced pimentos drained and added color. Canned mushrooms sliced thin went in next. Salt, white pepper, and a pinch of paprika seasoned everything. Hard-boiled eggs chopped into chunks folded through the hot sauce. The mixture heated through without boiling. Toast went on plates. The creamy egg mixture spooned over generous. Parsley snipped on top if the garden had any. The dish looked elegant. The red pimentos and mushroom pieces made it seem complicated. It tasted rich and creamy. The name suggested royalty or at least restaurant quality. But the ingredients cost almost nothing. Eggs, milk, flour, canned vegetables, things every kitchen already had. The fancy name made children eat it without questions. It felt special even when it wasn't. 6 eggs stretched to feed 8 people when mixed into sauce and served over toast. Eggs a la king disappeared when cream of mushroom soup came in cans and replaced homemade white sauce. Then when frozen dinners sold something called turkey a la king that nobody liked. The name became associated with cafeteria food and TV dinners. The breakfast lost its fancy reputation. Nobody wanted to eat anything called a la king anymore. The name that once elevated cheap food became a joke about bad institutional cooking. 15 forgotten breakfasts revealed. Grits cooked slow with cheese. Coffee soup from stale bread. Turkey scrapple from scraps. Baked oatmeal sliced like cake. Eggs a la king that sounded fancy. 15 more ahead. The frugal tricks get even better. Stay watching. Apple pancake ring was the beautiful breakfast that looked like something from a bakery but used regular pancake ingredients arranged differently. A cast iron skillet heated with butter melting inside. 2 apples peeled, cored, and sliced thin. The apple slices arranged in a circle around the bottom of the hot skillet. They cooked for a few minutes until they started to soften. Sugar and cinnamon sprinkled over the apples. Regular pancake batter mixed up. Flour, baking powder, salt, sugar, egg, milk, and melted butter whisked together. The batter poured carefully over the apples in the skillet. It covered them completely. The skillet went into a hot oven. The pancake baked for 20 minutes. It puffed up golden around the edges. When done, a plate flipped over the top of the skillet. She turned the whole thing upside down. The pancake released onto the plate with the caramelized apples on top arranged in a perfect circle. It looked impressive. The apples glistened. The pancake stayed fluffy. Everyone ate it cut into wedges like pie. The apples added sweetness, so less syrup needed. 1 apple pancake ring fed 6 people. It turned ordinary breakfast into something worth taking a picture of if cameras had been common then. Apple pancake ring disappeared when individual plating became standard. Everyone wanted their own stack of pancakes. Sharing one big pancake seemed old-fashioned. The presentation required a group gathered around a table. When families stopped eating together, the dish stopped making sense. Nobody makes a ring pancake for one person. Cheese Dreams was the breakfast that turned leftover cheese sandwiches into something crispy and warm by frying them like French toast. White bread sliced thick. Sliced cheese between 2 pieces. American cheese worked best because it melted smooth. The sandwiches assembled and waited. Eggs beaten with a splash of milk and a pinch of salt. Each cheese sandwich dipped into the egg mixture. Both sides coated completely. Butter heated in a cast iron skillet. The egg-coated sandwiches went in one at a time. They fried until golden brown on both sides. The cheese inside melted. The egg coating crisped up. The bread stayed soft in the middle. They cut diagonal and served hot. The combination of crispy egg coating and melted cheese inside tasted better than either grilled cheese or French toast alone. Children loved them. The name made them sound magical. Cheese Dreams felt like a treat even though they cost almost nothing. 4 sandwiches fed a family when cut in half. The dish used ingredients every kitchen kept on hand: bread, cheese, eggs, butter. Nothing special, but the method transformed them into something everyone wanted. Cheese Dreams disappeared when breakfast became something grabbed on the way out the door. Standing at the stove to fry sandwiches took time nobody had anymore. Toaster ovens and microwaves offered faster ways to heat cheese sandwiches. The egg coating seemed like extra work for minimal benefit. Pop-Tarts and cereal required no cooking at all. Nobody wanted to crack eggs and heat a skillet when convenience foods waited in the pantry. Tomato gravy on biscuits was the vegetarian Southern breakfast that proved gravy didn't need meat to taste good. Butter or bacon grease if they had it melted in a cast-iron skillet. Flour stirred in until it smelled toasted and turned golden. A can of crushed tomatoes or fresh tomatoes chopped fine went in next. The tomatoes sizzled and bubbled. Milk poured in slowly while she stirred. The mixture thickened into a pink gravy. Sugar went in to balance the tomato acid, just a teaspoon. Salt and black pepper seasoned it. The gravy simmered until it coated the back of a spoon. Biscuits split open and placed on plates. The hot tomato gravy ladled over generous. It soaked into the biscuits. The gravy tasted tangy and rich at the same time. The tomatoes provided acid. The milk provided cream. The combination worked better than it sounded. Tomato gravy stretched 1 can of tomatoes to cover a dozen biscuits. Breakfast for 6 people from 1 ingredient plus pantry staples. The dish satisfied when meat cost too much or ran out between grocery trips. Children ate it without asking where the sausage was. Tomato gravy disappeared when white gravy with sausage became the standard and tomato version seemed strange. Red gravy belonged on pasta, not biscuits in people's minds. The color looked wrong for breakfast. Fast food biscuit sandwiches always came with white gravy or meat. Nobody remembered tomatoes could make gravy too. The vegetarian option got lost when categories became rigid. Turkey sausage milk gravy was the hearty breakfast that filled empty stomachs and kept working men going until lunch without costing much. Ground turkey sausage browned in a cast-iron skillet. The meat broke into small pieces as it cooked. When fully browned, she didn't drain it. The fat and browned bits stayed in the pan. Flour sprinkled over the cooked sausage. It stirred through until the flour absorbed the fat and coated the meat. Milk poured in slowly. She stirred, constantly scraping up the browned bits from the bottom. The mixture bubbled and thickened. More milk added if it got too thick. Black pepper went in heavy, more than seemed right. Salt balanced it. The gravy simmered until it coated the spoon thick. Biscuits split open on plates. The sausage gravy ladled over warm. It covered the biscuits completely. The gravy soaked through. Every bite had sausage pieces. The dish tasted rich and peppery. The milk gravy turned creamy from the sausage fat. 1 pound of turkey sausage made enough gravy for a dozen biscuits. Breakfast for 6 people with leftovers. The meal stuck to ribs and provided protein that lasted. Turkey sausage gravy disappeared outside the South when biscuits and gravy became a punchline about unhealthy Southern food. Diet culture made creamy gravy seem shameful. Low-fat milk and turkey sausage couldn't save it. Fast food sold it, but that made it seem worse, not better. Nobody wanted to admit eating biscuits and gravy at home anymore. The comfort became a guilty pleasure instead of normal breakfast. Buckwheat cakes was the dark, nutty pancakes that tasted nothing like regular pancakes and cost less because buckwheat flour stretched further. Buckwheat flour mixed with a little white flour to lighten it. Baking powder, salt, and a spoonful of sugar went in. An egg beaten with milk stirred through. Melted butter added last. The batter came together darker than regular pancake batter. Almost gray. The texture stayed thin, a griddle heated with butter. She poured small circles. They cooked different than wheat pancakes. The edges set faster. She flipped them when bubbles formed. The second side cooked quick. Buckwheat cakes stacked smaller and darker. They smelled earthy and rich. The flavor tasted nutty, almost savory. Butter and maple syrup on top. The dark color looked unusual, but the taste made up for it. Buckwheat flour cost less than white flour and went further because the flavor was stronger. A little buckwheat mixed with regular flour made the white flour last longer. 1 cup of buckwheat flour made twice as many pancakes as regular flour because it absorbed more liquid. The cakes filled bellies better too. Turkey sausage milk gravy. Buckwheat cakes dark and nutty. 10 more ahead. The most forgotten ones are coming. Stay until the end. Fried apple rings was the sweet, simple breakfast that turned 3 apples into enough crispy fritters to feed 6 people when fruit felt like a luxury most families couldn't afford fresh. Apples bought in bulk during fall harvest stored in cool basements through winter. By spring, they started to soften and wrinkle. Nobody wanted to eat them plain anymore. But fried, they transformed into something children fought over. She peeled 3 large apples and cored them with a knife. The apples sliced into rings about ½ an inch thick. Each apple made 4 or 5 rings depending on size. The rings soaked in a bowl of cold water with lemon juice to keep them from browning while she made the batter. Flour, baking powder, salt, and sugar mixed in a bowl. An egg beaten with milk stirred through. The batter came together thick enough to coat the apple rings completely. Oil heated deep in a cast-iron skillet. When a drop of batter sizzled, the oil was ready. She lifted apple rings from the water one at a time. Each ring dipped into the batter, coating both sides and the center hole. The coated rings dropped carefully into the hot oil. They bubbled and puffed immediately. The batter turned golden brown. She flipped each ring once. Both sides fried crispy. The apples inside softened and turned sweet. They drained on newspaper or brown paper bags. Cinnamon sugar mixed in a shallow dish. While still hot, the fried rings rolled through the cinnamon sugar. The coating stuck to the warm oil. They piled on a plate in the center of the table. Everyone ate them with their hands. The outside crunched. The apple inside tasted like pie filling. The cinnamon sugar made them taste like something from a bakery. 3 apples made 15 to 20 rings. Enough for 6 people to have seconds. The rings cost almost nothing. Apples that would have been thrown away. Flour and sugar from the pantry. 1 egg. That's all it took to make breakfast feel like a celebration. Children requested them by name. The smell of frying apples and cinnamon filled the house. Everyone got hungry before they even sat down. Fried apple rings disappeared when throwing away soft apples became normal. Buying fresh fruit year-round made storing apples through winter unnecessary. Egg and onion scramble was the humble, filling breakfast that used 1 large onion to stretch 4 eggs into a meal that fed 6 people, when eggs cost too much to give everyone 2. Onions stored well through winter in cool, dry places. Every kitchen had them. They cost almost nothing, but most people only used them as seasoning. The scramble changed that. 1 large yellow onion, peeled and diced small. Butter melted in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat. The diced onion went in. She stirred them constantly. The onions cooked slowly. They turned soft and translucent first. Then golden. The edges started to brown and caramelize. The kitchen smelled sweet. The onions cooked for 10 minutes until they turned dark golden. 4 eggs cracked into a bowl and beaten with a fork. Salt and pepper mixed through. The beaten eggs poured over the cooked onions still in the hot skillet. She didn't stir right away. The eggs set on the bottom first. Then she pushed them gently with a wooden spoon. Large soft curds formed. The eggs cooked through the onions. The onions distributed evenly. The whole thing stayed soft, not dry. The eggs finished cooking in less than 2 minutes. The scramble spooned onto plates, toast on the side. The dish tasted sweet from the caramelized onions. The eggs provided protein. The onions provided bulk. 4 eggs that normally fed 4 people now fed 6 because the onions took up half the volume. Children ate it without complaining. The sweet onions made the eggs taste different enough to feel interesting. Adults appreciated how filling it was. The scramble stuck to ribs better than plain eggs. Something about the onions made it more substantial. The meal satisfied longer. Hunger stayed away until lunch. Egg and onion scramble kept families fed when eggs got expensive, when chickens stopped laying in winter. The dish proved vegetables could stretch protein without anyone feeling cheated. It tasted good not just cheap. The scramble disappeared when buying a dozen eggs cost less than a gallon of milk. Stretching them didn't matter anymore. Convenience foods replaced homemade breakfasts. Frozen breakfast burritos and fast food sandwiches became normal. Nobody wanted to stand at the stove caramelizing onions for 10 minutes. Cereal poured in seconds. The patience required seemed unreasonable. The smell of cooking onions at breakfast seemed strange. Poached eggs in milk was the soft, comforting breakfast that turned plain eggs into something that tasted rich and creamy without adding butter or cheese. Milk cost less than cream. Eggs everyone already had. The combination created something that felt more expensive than it was. The method came from old country cooking where nothing went to waste. Every ingredient served double duty. Milk heated in a shallow skillet, not boiling, just barely simmering. Small bubbles around the edges. If the milk boiled, it scorched and ruined everything. She watched it carefully. A tablespoon of butter melted into the milk. Salt and white pepper seasoned it. White pepper because black specks looked wrong in white milk. When the milk simmered steady, she cracked eggs directly into the hot milk, one at a time. 4 eggs for 4 people. The eggs spread slightly. The whites started cooking immediately in the hot milk. The yolks stayed whole. She spooned the hot milk over the tops of the eggs. The whites set from the bottom up. The yolks stayed runny. The eggs poached gently. No vinegar needed. No swirling water. Just milk and eggs cooking together. After 3 minutes, the whites turned opaque and firm. The yolks still jiggled. Toast went on plates. She lifted each poached egg out with a slotted spoon, each egg placed on the toast. The hot milk left in the skillet poured over the eggs and toast. The milk soaked into the bread. The eggs sat on top. Everything ate together with a fork and knife. The yolks broke and mixed with the milk. The combination tasted creamy and rich. The milk flavored the eggs while cooking them. The eggs flavored the milk while poaching. Neither one stayed plain. The dish felt like something fancy. Individual servings. Carefully prepared. Elegant enough for guests, but simple enough for Tuesday. Poached eggs in milk used ingredients every kitchen kept on hand. It transformed them into something special. The breakfast filled bellies and provided protein without feeling heavy. It digested easily. Children ate it without complaints. The soft texture appealed to everyone. The milk made it feel more substantial than plain poached eggs. 1 cup of milk and 4 eggs fed 4 people a breakfast that satisfied until lunch. The dish disappeared when poaching eggs in water became the standard method. Poaching in milk seemed strange and old-fashioned. Cooking shows taught water poaching with vinegar. Milk poaching got forgotten. Younger generations never learned it existed. Salmon patties with eggs was the coastal breakfast that stretched 1 can of pink salmon into protein for the whole family when fresh fish cost too much and meat felt impossible. Canned salmon stocked pantries. It lasted forever. The small bones inside stayed soft enough to eat. They provided calcium nobody talked about, but everyone needed. 1 can of pink salmon drained and picked through for any hard pieces. The soft bones mashed into the salmon. They disappeared completely. The salmon flaked apart with a fork. 1 egg beaten mixed through. Saltine crackers crushed fine by hand inside their wrapper. The cracker crumbs bound everything together. Diced onion if they had it. Salt and pepper. Her hands mixed everything until it stuck together. The mixture shaped into 4 palm-sized patties. They flattened between her palms. Flour dusted each patty lightly. Oil heated in a cast-iron skillet. The salmon patties went in carefully. They fried until golden brown on both sides. 3 minutes per side. The outside crisped. The inside stayed moist. The salmon flavor came through mild, not fishy. The patties drained on newspaper, more oil heated in the same skillet. She cracked 4 eggs into the hot oil. They fried sunny side up. 1 egg per person. The fried eggs went on top of the salmon patties. The yolk stayed runny. The yolk stayed runny. When cut, the yolk ran down over the salmon patty like sauce. The combination worked perfectly. The rich yolk balanced the mild salmon. The crispy edges of both added texture. Toast soaked up the extra yolk. The meal provided protein twice. Salmon and eggs together. 1 can of salmon and 4 eggs fed 4 people a breakfast that kept them full until dinner. The dish cost less than a pound of bacon. It provided more nutrition than pancakes. The omega fats in salmon and the protein in eggs made it one of the healthiest breakfasts they ate. Nobody called it healthy then. They called it cheap. Salmon patties with eggs showed up on breakfast tables near coasts and along rivers where canned salmon shipped easily. Inland families ate them less often. The dish disappeared when fresh salmon became available year-round in grocery stores. Canned salmon seemed inferior by comparison. Younger generations grew up thinking canned fish meant tuna only. Pink salmon in cans got forgotten. The patties became associated with poverty cooking. Depression-era meals. Nobody wanted to admit eating them. Fast food breakfast sandwiches offered more convenience. Frozen fish sticks seemed more modern. The breakfast that provided affordable protein got lost. The one that stretched one can into a full meal disappeared. Abundance made economy seem shameful. Fresh became the only acceptable option. Liver and onions breakfast was the iron-rich morning meal that used the cheapest cut of meat available to provide protein when bacon cost too much and sausage felt like a luxury. Chicken liver in particular cost almost nothing. Butchers sold it by the pound for pennies. Most people didn't want it. The ones who knew how to cook it right fed their families well on very little. A pound of chicken liver rinsed under cold water. Any green spots cut away. The livers patted dry with a towel. Dampness made them splatter. Flour mixed with salt and pepper in a shallow dish. Each piece of liver dragged through the seasoned flour. Both sides coated. The flour helped them brown and created a light crust. Bacon grease or butter heated in a cast iron skillet. When the fat shimmered, the floured liver pieces went in. They didn't crowd the pan. Crowding made them steam, not fry. The liver cooked hot and fast. 2 minutes per side. No more. Overcooked liver turned grainy and bitter. Properly cooked liver stayed tender inside with a golden crust outside. The cooked liver moved to a plate. The same skillet with the same fat-cooked sliced onions. 2 large onions sliced thin. The onions went into the hot pan. They cooked down slowly. She stirred them often. The onions softened and caramelized. They turned sweet and golden brown. The browned bits from the liver flavored the onions. When the onions finished cooking, they went on top of the liver. Eggs fried in what was left of the fat, sunny side up. 1 or 2 per person depending on what they had. The eggs went on plates next to the liver and onions. Toast soaked up the pan juices. The combination worked. The sweet onions balanced the strong liver flavor. The rich egg yolk added fat. The toast provided something to push it all onto the fork. Liver provided more iron than any other breakfast. Women who knew about nutrition served it weekly. Children who grew up eating it didn't complain. They didn't know other families didn't eat liver for breakfast. It seemed normal. The meal cost less than $1 and fed 6 people food that kept them strong. Liver and onions breakfast disappeared when nutrition education taught everyone liver filtered toxins. People believed it must contain toxins itself. The science was wrong, but the belief spread. 25 forgotten breakfast revealed. Fried apple rings from wrinkled fruit. Egg and onion scramble stretched 4 eggs to feed 6. Poached eggs in milk tasted creamy. Salmon patties topped with fried eggs. Liver and onions provided iron. 5 more ahead. The rarest ones are next. Don't miss them. Fried hominy was the southern breakfast that turned bland canned corn into something crispy and savory that tasted nothing like corn anymore. Hominy was corn treated with lye. The process removed the hull. It made the kernels swell up twice their size. The result looked like giant white or golden corn kernels. Canned hominy sat in pantries because it lasted forever. It cost almost nothing. Most people didn't know what to do with it beyond heating it as a side dish. Frying it for breakfast transformed it completely. 2 cans of hominy drained completely. The liquid poured off. The hominy rinsed under cold water. Excess water shook off. Damp hominy spattered when it hit hot oil. Bacon grease or butter heated in a cast iron skillet. When the fat melted and got hot, the drained hominy went in all at once. It sizzled loud. She stirred it constantly with a wooden spoon. The hominy fried over medium-high heat. The outside of each kernel started to brown. Some kernels popped open. The insides turned golden and crispy. The smell changed from bland corn to something nutty and toasted. Salt and black pepper seasoned it heavy. Some families added diced onion to fry with the hominy, others kept it plain. The hominy fried for 10 to 15 minutes. She stirred the whole time. The kernels turned golden brown all over. Some got dark and crispy on the edges. Those were the best ones. The finished hominy looked like large toasted corn nuts. It tasted savory and crunchy. The texture stayed slightly chewy in the center, crispy on the outside. Children ate it with their hands like popcorn. Adults ate it with eggs. The hominy replaced hash browns or grits. It provided bulk and carbohydrates. 2 cans fed 6 people a side dish that filled them up. The cans cost 20 cents total. Fried hominy appeared most often in southern and southwestern kitchens where hominy felt familiar. It showed up less in northern states. Hominy seemed exotic there. The dish stayed regional. It never spread nationally. Fried hominy disappeared when hash browns became standard. Hominy became something only used in pozole or menudo. Younger generations never tasted it outside of soup. Molasses oatmeal was the dark, sweet breakfast that turned plain oats into something rich and filling when sugar cost too much, and honey felt like a luxury. Molasses lasted forever. 1 jar sat in the pantry for months. It cost less than sugar and provided more flavor. The strong taste meant a little went a long way. Oatmeal cooked the regular way. Water boiled in a pot. Rolled oats stirred in. The heat dropped low. The oats simmered and absorbed the water. She stirred occasionally for 5 minutes until they thickened. Most families stopped there and added whatever they had. Butter. Milk. A sprinkle of sugar. But when even sugar ran short, molasses replaced everything. When the oatmeal finished cooking, she turned off the heat. She stirred in 2 tablespoons of molasses per cup of dry oats. The molasses swirled dark through the pale oats. It colored everything brown. The smell changed from plain oats to something deep and almost smoky. The molasses dissolved completely from the heat of the oats. It sweetened every spoonful. The flavor tasted different than sugar. Richer. More complex. Almost like brown sugar, but stronger. Some families added a pat of butter on top. The butter melted into the hot molasses oatmeal. Others poured milk around the edges to cool it down enough to eat. The combination of molasses and milk tasted like something more complicated than it was. Children either loved it or hated it. The strong molasses flavor didn't hide. There was no pretending it tasted like sugar. Adults appreciated how filling it was. The molasses provided iron and minerals. Nobody talked about nutrition then. Women knew instinctively that dark molasses did something sugar didn't. The oatmeal stuck to ribs. It kept working men going until lunch. The energy lasted longer than plain oatmeal. Something about the molasses made the meal more substantial. 1 cup of dry oats and 2 tablespoons of molasses fed 4 people a breakfast that cost almost nothing. The jar of molasses lasted months. Oats bought in bulk cost pennies per pound. The breakfast provided everything needed to start the day. Molasses oatmeal disappeared when refined white sugar became cheaper than molasses. The strong flavor started seeming old-fashioned instead of economical. Instant oatmeal packets came with sugar already mixed in. Individual flavors in pouches. Maple, cinnamon, artificial fruit flavors. Nobody wanted dark molasses anymore. The taste seemed too strong, too plain, too much like poverty. Younger generations associated molasses with gingerbread cookies at Christmas, not breakfast every day. Johnny Cakes was the cornmeal breakfast that turned cheap yellow cornmeal into pancakes that tasted nothing like wheat flour pancakes and cost half as much. Cornmeal stored well. It lasted months without going bad. One bag bought in bulk fed a family for weeks. The cakes came from New England originally. They traveled south and west with settlers who needed cheap filling food. The name came from journey cakes, food that traveled well and cooked fast over any fire. 1 cup of yellow cornmeal mixed with half a cup of white flour. The white flour helped them hold together. Cornmeal alone crumbled. Baking powder, salt, and a tablespoon of sugar stirred through the dry ingredients. An egg beaten with milk mixed in. Melted butter added last. The batter came together thicker than regular pancake batter. It didn't pour smooth. It dropped from a spoon in thick blobs. A griddle heated with butter. She dropped spoonfuls of batter onto the hot griddle. They spread slightly but stayed thick. The edges set fast. Bubbles formed on top but fewer than wheat pancakes. She flipped them when the bottoms turned golden brown. The second side cooked quick. Johnny Cakes stacked smaller and denser than regular pancakes. They looked more yellow than white. The texture stayed grainy from the cornmeal, not smooth like wheat flour. The flavor tasted of corn, slightly sweet, almost savory. They ate different. Butter and maple syrup on top, sometimes just butter and salt. The cakes filled bellies better than wheat pancakes. The cornmeal provided something that lasted. Hunger stayed away longer. 1 cup of cornmeal made 8 to 10 cakes, enough for a family when money ran short. The cakes cost less than wheat pancakes because cornmeal cost less than white flour. Johnny Cakes showed up most often in poor rural areas, places where cornmeal felt more common than wheat. The South. Appalachia, farm country. They stayed a regional food, never spreading nationally like buttermilk pancakes did. Johnny Cakes disappeared when white flour became cheap enough that cornmeal seemed inferior by comparison. Fluffy white pancakes became the standard. Yellow cornmeal cakes seemed rough and country. Store-bought pancake mix made wheat pancakes easier than Johnny Cakes. The mix promised perfect pancakes every time. Light, fluffy, golden. Johnny Cakes couldn't compete with that promise. The texture stayed dense no matter what. The grainy cornmeal couldn't hide. Younger generations grew up thinking pancakes meant wheat flour only. Cornmeal belonged in cornbread, not breakfast. The cakes that fed families for generations on almost nothing got lost. Cheap stopped being a good enough reason to eat something. Texture and appearance mattered more. Regional foods got replaced by standardized national brands. Johnny Cakes became a historical curiosity, not breakfast. Baked grits casserole was the make-ahead Southern breakfast that transformed plain grits into something sturdy enough to slice and serve like cake when feeding a crowd required planning ahead. Regular stovetop grits had to be stirred constantly. They couldn't sit. They had to be served immediately. The casserole changed that. The grits could be made the night before, reheated in the morning, or served at room temperature. The flexibility made it perfect for church breakfasts, family reunions, any time a lot of people needed feeding without anyone standing at the stove stirring. 4 cups of water boiled with salt. 1 cup of white grits poured in slowly while stirring. The heat dropped low. The grits cooked for 20 minutes, stirring often until they thickened and absorbed all the water. When done, she stirred in butter. A full stick, the butter melted through. Sharp cheddar cheese, grated fresh, went in next. 2 full cups. The cheese melted from the heat of the grits. 3 eggs beaten in a bowl, tempered with a little of the hot grits first so they wouldn't scramble. The eggs stirred through, everything mixed until smooth. The mixture poured into a greased baking dish. It spread even. The casserole baked in a moderate oven for 45 minutes. The top turned golden. The edges pulled away slightly. The center set firm. When done, a knife inserted came out clean. The casserole cooled for 10 minutes before cutting. It sliced clean into squares. Each piece held its shape. The texture stayed creamy inside with a slightly firm top. The cheese flavor came through strong. The eggs made it rich. The casserole ate like a cross between grits and quiche. It served warm or room temperature. Both ways tasted good. The dish fed 12 people from 1 cup of grits, more if cut into smaller pieces. The casserole provided protein from the eggs and cheese, carbohydrates from the grits. It stuck to ribs and kept people full for hours. Baked grits casserole showed up at every Southern church breakfast, every family gathering, every potluck. It traveled well. It reheated well. Everyone ate it. The casserole disappeared when individual breakfast preferences replaced group eating. Buffets offered 10 different things. Everyone wanted choice. The casserole required everyone to eat the same thing. It worked for crowds, not for modern families where everyone ate different foods at different times. Frozen breakfast sandwiches let each person heat their own. Convenience replaced community. The casserole that fed generations at gatherings got pushed aside. The recipe stayed in old church cookbooks, handwritten on cards in recipe boxes. But nobody made it anymore. The breakfast that brought people together got lost when eating together stopped being important. Potato soup for breakfast was the Depression-era meal that hung on through the 1950s in families where wasting nothing mattered and leftover dinner became next morning's breakfast without apology. Potato soup made the night before sat in the pot on the stove. By morning, it thickened even more. The potatoes absorbed more liquid overnight. The flavors settled. Some families reheated it. Others ate it room temperature. Either way worked. The soup filled bellies and provided energy to start the day. 8 cups of diced potatoes, 1 cup of diced onion, 1 cup of grated carrot if they had it, 1/4 cup of butter. Everything cooked together in water until the vegetables turned soft. Salt and pepper seasoned it. Some families mashed half the potatoes to thicken the broth. Others left everything in chunks. Milk stirred in at the end made it creamy. The soup sat overnight. By morning, the potatoes had absorbed most of the liquid. The soup turned thick, almost like mashed potatoes with chunks. It reheated on the stove with a splash more milk to thin it, or it ate cold. Children growing up during the Depression never thought twice about eating soup for breakfast. It seemed normal. Warm food. Filling. That's what mattered. The vegetables provided nutrition. The milk provided calcium. The potatoes provided energy. Breakfast was supposed to fuel the body for work. Potato soup did that. Whether it looked like traditional breakfast didn't matter. Potato soup for breakfast showed up most often in families that experienced real poverty. Immigrant families. Farm families. Anyone who knew hunger. They didn't waste food. If soup was left from dinner, it became breakfast. No shame. No apology, just practicality. The soup cost almost nothing to make. Potatoes bought in bulk. Onions from storage. Carrots from the garden or winter storage. Butter and milk. Basic ingredients that lasted. 1 pot fed 6 people dinner with enough left for breakfast. 2 meals from 1 cooking session. Potato soup for breakfast disappeared when breakfast became a defined category with specific foods that belonged and others that didn't. Cereal, eggs, pancakes, toast. Those were breakfast. Soup was lunch or dinner, not morning food. The categories hardened. Crossing them seemed wrong. Children stopped growing up eating soup for breakfast. They thought it sounded weird. Gross even. The idea of yesterday's dinner reheated for breakfast became associated with poverty. Something to hide, not admit. Convenience foods offered breakfast-specific options. Nobody needed to reheat dinner anymore. The soup that kept families fed through hard times got lost. The one that proved breakfast was about nutrition, not tradition, disappeared. Eating together stopped being more important than eating the right category of food.